Casey Zeman, when you were 8 years old, you thought you were invisible. I was wondering if you could share that story because I think it's just a wonderful introduction to what we're going to talk about today.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. One of my most awkward stories of when growing up, but a story I think that carried a lot of weight for who I was and am as a person. Um, yeah. So when I was a kid, I'm a twin, and as a kid, I always I had some I had a lot of self-confidence issues. I thought I was, at the time, at this point when I was 8, 9, something like that. I was a little heavy as a kid, pasty, white, freckly, and I always like I always looked at, like, I compared myself a lot. So I had this friend who was he was super cool. He was like the coolest kid in class, and he was like tan all around. He like I was somehow I have a Jewish heritage, but I turned out to be some like sort of white and pasty and freckly, and he was more like a Sephardic Jewish person. He had like darker skin, and I was so envious of his darker, beautiful skin. And I remember one time he showed me, his parents, like, they had a tanning lamp at his house, and one time he was like, he showed me this tanning cream, and it blew my mind that there was such a thing as tanning cream. And I was like, oh, that's it, that's what I need. And so one day, when I was drive or on my bike, just biking home from school one day, or at some point, because he wasn't there. No one was. So I went to his house. I went to the back into. I went up the driveway to the back of his house and knocked to see if he was around. And I don't know what compelled me to go there. This is something of like, when I was a kid, I kind of had impulse control stuff. Like, it was just, I was kind of just doing some weird things. Like, sometimes if I found a stray dog, I would take that dog back to its house, but I'd open the door of the house, go into the house. And one time I actually found the dog food and fed the dog and then left the house. So I always had some these very weird boundary lines and also impulse stuff. So all I was thinking about when I went to his house was, I wonder if he's home so I could try that tanning cream. And I knocked on the back door. He wasn't there. And I tried the door. And, this is back in the day when sometimes we didn't lock our doors, of course, this was near Detroit. So I'm not sure, it was in a place called Huntington Woods. And,
But
I
Casey,
guess
tell
he just
me,
didn't lock his door.
there's something
Yeah.
I want to point out. You're mentioning that you wanted to try this brown tanning cream, but you didn't
Yeah.
mention why, right? Or you're still getting to that part because that was very interesting for me.
Yeah, here's why. I was envious of what he looked like, and I again, a lot of self-confidence issues. I didn't like how I looked. I didn't like I felt sometimes also that I so sometimes I felt like when I was hanging out with friends or people, like I would feel invisible sometimes, like not seen, and like and sometimes and I felt like this, by putting this on, I would be a different person. I would be seen, maybe, right? And I think that was one of the reasons why, like, internally, like I felt like my identity was, I didn't really have my own identity. I'm a twin brother. He and I are very similar. Sometimes I would be called my brother's name, and so I think I was dealing with a lot of identity crisis stuff when I was a kid. And so anything to be a different version of me was what I was trying to do, right? And so when I went to his house, that was the goal. It was to put on this, not in it's not a, I think I called it at one point an invisibility cloak or something like that, but it was like armor. It was like putting on stuff that would make me different to face the day. And I didn't have to face life as me. I faced it as a character or a version of me, that could handle the day. So yeah, I went to his house. I opened the back door, walked in, and called for him. He never answered, and I just walked sort of all the way upstairs and went into the bathroom that I knew the tanning cream was in, and I found it and I just started putting it on, dot after dot, rubbing it into my skin, feeling like I was changing. I was turning into somebody different, somebody better, when all of a sudden I heard the front door open and shut. And the way the house is positioned is the stairwell is right. The door is at the bottom of the stairwell. So I could see coming into the house was Aaron's stepmom and two sisters. So I, I had this moment when I, I was like, holy crap, what do I do? And I, they started coming up the stairs. I went into I went into their room to hide, and for whatever reason, like, luckily they didn't see me. They came into the room. I was hiding somewhere behind a closet. This sounds very like I was young, luckily, so it wasn't like too creepy, but it was creepy also if I thought about it, thinking back. But like,
Mm.
they came out. They came out of their room, and they didn't see me, and I started to creep out of their room, and the mom's room was on the opposite side of the hall with them. They were all there. They were talking about a birthday party because he was having a birthday party that day that I would be attending later that day. And so they were all talking about it. And I just looked at them. They didn't see me. And I was able to just like walk out the door and slowly walk down the steps. And I was like, maybe they don't see me because I'm invisible. Maybe I'm still sort of like this invisible person that no one can really see. And I think that
Mm.
I went through a lot of that when I was a kid. So I walked out the front door and got on my bike, because my bike I left in the front, and they didn't apparently recognize it, and I just biked off. And
Mm.
later on that day, I came back to his house and had cake and ice cream, and that was that. But
So
yeah,
the
such a very
the tanning cream
yeah,
didn't end up working for you for that the solution didn't end up being a
I
good
guess
solution
not.
for you.
That's exactly right. It ended up not working. They apparently, damn it, I was still invisible, I guess. But
Okay.
yeah, I after that, I used tanning cream like 3 or 4 years later, and actually I used it quite a bit, to be honest with you. Like, I'd go to camp and I'd like put it on, and then I'd be the orange kid at camp, you know. Um, and I don't know what it was. It was just I had this like this obsession with this stuff, and I think it was that it was like it was or it could have been the image of beauty, what beauty is. It's tan, and you know what I mean. And so
Mm.
maybe I just had a warped sense of that. But yeah, that was that was one of many strange stories of when I was a kid. Um,
Well, I don't think it's strange at all, especially if you look at human psychology and the maybe if I could come back to the reason why I wanted to ask that question was because I felt the same as a kid. Uh, it
mm,
manifested in different ways. I remember when I was 5 years old, I saw a television program. It was a news program, and I remember
mm,
watching it and thinking, I want to be that person on the TV reading the news. And I didn't know why,
mm,
but looking
mm,
back later on, I've noticed, or I've realized at least, that the reason I wanted to be there on the TV was because I could see that that person was being listened to and being heard and being seen.
mm,
And me as a
mm,
little 5-year-old, for whatever reason, I didn't feel like that I was being noticed. I didn't feel like I was
mm,
being seen. And when I saw your story, it was a Goldcast, I think, that made a video on that,
Yeah.
and I think it went viral. It was when I saw it, it was like, this is so cool, because it really resonated with me, because I also felt invisible as a child, and
Mm.
also growing up. And I mean, even to this day, I could go to an event, and unless I really go out of my way, I would just sort of disappear in the crowd,
Mm.
and I'd literally
Hmm.
feel invisible. It's like, what? People can't see me. And but I also think it's very interesting. A lot of interesting things that comes to it. But I want to ask you, how do you
Mm.
think that shaped you, and how you then eventually got into video and being on video? You became an actor. Like, you did real estate stuff, but you did some acting as well, and then you got into video, and now you got
Hmm.
a video SaaS business. How do you think that
Mm.
was the bridge for to get you into the video stuff?
Yeah, gosh, these are really good questions. So what I think had happened, when I was a kid, when I felt the most comfortable, when I was a kid, was being another character, right? And I fell in love with acting when I was a kid because if I could just be these characters, and I didn't have to I didn't have to live in my own skin and say this is me, right? And so that's why I just enjoyed acting, just living as somebody else, because of all the things that I didn't really want to live with myself, I guess. And eventually, it was so interesting because, like, I was doing acting, I was doing real estate stuff, and then I started to, you know, create this like business all around like video, like because we were like some of the first like video people, video marketers, out there. And I did stuff with YouTube, and I was doing like I delved into like just understanding YouTube, and I saw how people were showing up. One of my friends, Chris Farrell, whom you may know actually.
Yeah, I do.
um,
Yeah,
he
I know of
he
him.
was the
I haven't
first.
met him yet. Mhm.
Yeah, well, he was probably one of the first guys, as well as you, that I could see where they were being themselves, putting themselves in front of the camera, and being themselves. And to me, I was like, that was such a novel thing for me that I couldn't even still do it. I was like, I did it, and I was like, wait, is this the me that I want to be showing, or is this a me version of somebody else that's the me So I had to do so much work to try to figure out what was the actual me, because I loved how Chris showed up, right? And so if you go back to some of my old videos, some of the way I talk was the same as how Chris talked. And
Mm.
it's because I really just did not feel comfortable figuring out who I as a person was and how I would show up in front of the camera. And so this transition into this business, which actually was the thing that made me a bit more money than the acting thing. Um, I just started to make more videos and slowly get more comfortable with me, right? But definitely early on in the videos, I had to sort of latch into people that inspired me. You inspired me, Chris inspired me, a few other people that were watching, who were just being themselves, inspired me. So I tried to do that, and it felt good. It felt like, oh, I'm actually being listened to as me, you know
Mm.
and it was such a different experience than I'd grown up with, that that actually creating my own business and putting myself in front of the camera and putting myself out there, when I did that more and more, was therapeutic, and it helped me to figure out who I am. It also helped me to know that I can create something. I can create something as me, not having to be somebody else out of thin air. I can create as me without having to rely on anchoring myself as a specific person, right? I just really had to do the work to figure out what me was showing up, right? What
Mm.
me was open and honest and there to show up. The was it the silly, because I'm very silly, right? I'm super silly. Was it the super silly me? Was it the fun, silly, serious me? It's like, and I just allowed myself to just show up as however I was feeling eventually. But it took time to get to that point. But I think that's why I jumped into video, because it was a way that I could figure out who I was as a person, you know?
I think it's certainly done a better job at making you be seen and making you visible than the tanning lotion. So
I think you're
definitely.
right, and I think that's the point. Is that oh wow, I can people will show up and listen when I can just be myself, right? And again, this is something we have to remind ourselves. I have to remind myself of this all the time, because in video you can fall away from that, or you can also you can follow a trend, and a way people are speaking, and so therefore you follow that way, so it's like you can always fall into these traps, and I've fallen into it more than once, even after I determined and discerned that, oh, people will listen to me just for being me, right? But it's one of those constant reminders that I do. People will listen, but again, when you feel that, and you've felt it your whole life, you know it is sometimes it knocks on the door, and you have to know to not let it in, so to speak, that insecurity. So
Hmm. Okay, so you
is that
started
it,
off
are
with.
you kind of in that same boat? How does yours play out?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I've actually got a very similar story. I'm not sure if you know that I did acting as well. Not as probably not as much and as extensive as you, but I had a bit of a stint of acting before I actually had a successful business, which is really interesting. It's so, but that's sort of a story for another time. But I want to bring it a little bit back to just your progression, because the links to me is just so they're just so interesting, because you started off as a kid feeling invisible and having this desire to be seen, and then you had some solutions, one being the tanning lotion, but then eventually getting onto video, and then using that as a almost like a way as therapy almost, but a way for you
Hmm.
to show yourself. And then the next obstacle you had to face was, who do you show? Now that you can be visible, who do you show? Do you show uh, another version of you that is not quite the real Casey, or do you show the real you, the authentic Casey? And how do you do that?
Yeah.
And that sounds like it was a big journey for you. And that's particularly interesting. I was going to cover it later, but I think maybe let's bring it in now. But what's been on my mind lately is how AI has been demolishing almost
Mm.
all of our moats, all of our competitive advantages. Like you can vibe code any software now almost. You can vibe edit now. I noticed Descript has just released their vibe editing version to a wider audience, where you can just talk to it and it edits your videos for you. There's a vibe image editing, image graphic design. I designed a whole new book
Mm.
and all the graphics go along with it. But there's one thing, it seems, that is like the last bastion for us as humans,
Mm.
and especially humans who are in the video industry, that AI can't seem to replicate. And I hope it won't replace it, but it's that authenticity, and it's that connection that you have with a person.
Mm.
And I know this, we know this, well, at least for now. I haven't been able to think that we as humans can get completely replaced, because AI can't be me. The best that AI can do is to create a clone of me. And I think it'll probably get to a point where people won't be able to tell the difference, whether it's my clone or me. However, I still
Mm.
wonder, what's going to be that last bastion. And it's really interesting that you were, the progression you were on from wanting to be seen, then being seen, and then the authenticity thing kicking in, and now with
Mm-hmm.
AI. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, because you've been at the forefront of technology as well. We haven't talked about EasyWebinar yet, and how the genesis story of that. But if you could quickly talk about, since you mentioned the authenticity thing, how important
Yeah.
do you think that is now, but also for the future of what you're doing with video?
Well, I think there's more. Like that's the thing about AI. There's this whole like this revolution of content and of things created. There's just so much more that's going to be coming. There was already a ton, but now there's even more. So there's going to be kind of more noise, more added to the AI sort of static that we are going to keep on seeing. AI is amazing, don't get me wrong, we use it all the time. We're adding AI to our platform, we're doing so much with AI as a company, and I'm using it obviously as for a ton of things. One thing that I feel though that it there's two elements of this. One thing is like, first, your question was, will AI ever, get to replace us? Is it going to get so good that it can replace us? And we're not there yet. To say that AI will have the emotional response that it needs to have to be able to be fully us. I mean, it's what they're doing right now is with what is AGI, right? It's like they have it hallucinating, and hallucination is another way for it to kind of create something out of nothing, right? It's like imagination, right? So AGI has like its imagination is now sort of burgeoning, right, through what they call hallucinations. So will that get to a point where it can be us, basically? Can it be us where maybe we're talking about these, recalling old stories, and we start to well up in our eyes and start to feel certain emotions? Can AI ever get to that point? And I think that it, maybe on the peripheral it can to some degree. If I think maybe it will get there where obviously they have AI actors and AI avatars. They're going to just be pretty, people are, they're probably going to be super popular, but I don't think it's there yet. Will it get there? It's possible, and it's possible it'll come in the next 2 to 3 years, that it can be emotional, but can it be so emotional that it like switches gears? And you know I don't think so. I feel like it can't get there quite yet. The other part of that is the one thing that that AI can't replace is the journey. We as creative people, like now AI can do so much for us, so much for us. It can write emails, it can write copy, it can build web pages, it can actually build software, as you mentioned, it can do all these things. But if you're a creative person, or, and th- there are some things we crave, some things we want to hold on to. And I feel like the creative process is one of those things that, if I don't have a creative process, let's say I'm writing, or I'm doing an acting piece, or I'm needing to write a speech that really resonates and connects, and I can speak, my truth to you, that moves me as an artist, as a person, as a creative human. And if AI is replacing that, where does that leave me as a creative? What
Mm.
happens to that thing that I need to fill? It's gone, right? I'm not getting that creative journey, in feeling that satisfaction that's also helping me mentally, right? Being a creative and doing it, and going on a journey to do X, Y, and Z is helping me to also work through my own trauma, blah, 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 all these things. And if I don't have that, because AI has taken over everything, then I'm just left as a shell of myself. And then I have nothing. So I don't think it's going to replace those elements of the creative journey, because we, as hopefully humans, will crave that and want that and keep that, right? And I feel like maybe there will be an uprising of this, and maybe people will go back to this old school way of doing things because they crave that, the journaling, the when we do something that feels like we've accomplished something, like writing in a journal or writing our feelings out. Like if we just let AI do it, then we're not ever getting it out, and we're not ever moving through what emotion it's making us, that we need to feel in order to have some cathartic response or catharsis, so I don't know. I just feel like it's not going to replace that, because if it is, then we're going to have an uprising of creative people that will want to go back to that point.
Well,
That's my
let's
thought.
talk about this uprising idea, because I had a conversation with Robert Scoble, tech influencer guy. He was one of the first
Yeah.
guys on Twitter. I think he was the number one followed guy on Twitter for the first 2 years of the platform. So he's got the chops. And I asked
Yeah.
him, about that, and if there's going to be an uprising of sorts, and are people gonna kick against AI? And I wonder what your thoughts are on that as well, because
Mm.
where the level that I'm thinking at, which is it's probably still quite superficial compared to where we can take this, but a superficial but relatively urgent level. And when I say urgent, I mean next 6 to 12 months, maybe 1 to 2 years window.
Mm-hmm.
It I just wonder at what point we're going to get to where people will say, hey, I don't know if that is Casey on the
Mm.
video, and Casey or
Yeah.
the person on the video is telling me to buy his software. Now, for me as a human, I'm going, am I okay if I know that it's a clone of Casey and the clone says, buy my software? Am I okay? Am I going to, is that, will I have that same trust with the clone compared to if I know it's really you speaking? And my gut feeling is that I'm not going to trust the clone. I would trust Casey because I know you and I know I have a relationship
Mm.
with you. So, two things there for you. One is, what are your thoughts on the importance of that relationship? And two, looking ahead, what can we do as, I guess, business owners to to prevent that sort of a backlash, or maybe not even to prevent it, because I think it's going to happen anyway, but to build a moat of sorts where people will still be able to trust, like where people will know that it's us, that it's the real human
Yeah.
being that is conveying that message and that's building that trust with the viewer. What are your thoughts on those two things?
Yeah. These are really good questions. These are really good questions. Um, yeah, I love talking about this stuff. And it's just so relevant because of where we're at and what we're doing ourselves. So I do think that everybody is going to have an AI clone of themselves, and they're going to be doing a lot of stuff on camera. Um, at this point, though, I think that just I've mentioned this a couple times before, because I think nowadays people have to intensify their messaging. Um, I think that, you know, with how AI has sort of now controlled the narrative, in fact, how we're, the scripts that we're reading or writing or whatever, a lot of them have AI components, and so everybody's messaging and everybody's sort of conversations are all are looking the same. So I think like there's this need to sort of elevate the messaging and intensify the messaging with the human stuff. And the human stuff is the emotional stuff. And the emotional stuff, I don't think AI can really convey it all that well yet. Now, if you go in and you tell people that, hey, this is an AI, clone that will help you decide if you need this or not, I think going in with that approach of, hey, this is an AI version of myself. Like I have an AI version where I've fed it 4 million pieces of data, and it knows all my stuff. It's got some goal oriented stuff in there, but it still is not me, and it will give good answers around, like in terms of like helping someone with their business and so on and so forth, and it can help them in that way. But from the emotional side of things, it's not going to be able to convey my story as it relates to my audience. I think that it will be sort of a baseline story that AI will be able to tell, but they won't be able to tell it with emotion, right? And so
Mm.
I think that going in, if you know it's AI, if someone knows this is an AI version and this is what this AI can do, and this is the AI, this is the limitation that it has, that's fine as long as you understand that going in. And then if you're a buyer, that's great, but understanding the limitation. But I still think that people do want that relationship, human to human relationship. And so I think that there's still going to be a need to have that, whether it's running webinars to your audience, whether it's, meeting them weekly somewhere, online, in a community element. So I don't think AIs can replace that community element, that human to human
Mm.
element. But I do think if it's set up and clarified from the get go that you're communicating with a version of me that has been fed 4 million pieces of data, that has a lot of insight and knowledge. But if you're wondering about certain things about, how, I feel about your business, or what I think, beyond what AI is perceiving, then maybe you do need that human connection. But
Okay, so
um,
so
yeah,
let's make this practical and also at the same time introduce EasyWebinar to our listeners and viewers. So could
sure,
you
yeah,
tell us just quickly what EasyWebinar is? But then what I'm really interested in hearing from you is how you will be growing EasyWebinar, or if
mhm,
you don't want to talk about that, how you would
yeah,
imagine growing a brand using video going into the future, especially with what we've just talked about with authenticity and trust.
hmm
Would it be a good idea to use AI to promote and grow your business and build relationships? Should we do something else to strengthen the authenticity and the actual human element? What are your thoughts on that? So tell us a bit about Easy Webinar and how you think you're going to be growing that with video going forward.
yeah. Yeah, well, EasyWebinar is a platform that helps you to scale sales and marketing using high impact presentations, webinars, workshops. It does both live webinars, similar to Zoom, has a lot of engagement elements. It also does what's called automated webinars, where it can stream events with the experience of live without them being live. They can be streamed in real time, and all of these live and automated webinars have marketing pieces. So they have call to action buttons and a deep dive analytics that help you to know who your customers are, their actions that they're taking. And that information, it helps you to get closer to the sale, right? And because webinars do that human to human connection, you're able to do the one to many way of selling. And so that's what Easy Webinar is fundamentally. And we started early on as a WordPress plugin, and at the time it was just an automated webinar. So it was a long time ago that it started off completely different, and it didn't turn into what we could call a SaaS company basically until 2018, and that's when we started to actually sell it as an actual SaaS platform, where it's month to month subscription, right? Before then it was a plugin. People bought the lifetime access to a plugin, and so it was very different. but yeah, that's where EasyWebinar has grown to. People use EasyWebinar a lot to put a high impact presentation in front of a sales call to get the sales call to make to qualify the person before they get on the sales call. We have people that have done this, and they've been able to take 10 salespeople and reduce it just to one or two, because the webinar does the heavy lifting of positioning the know, like, and trust, and why that person needs whatever product or service you have. And then you get them on a call, and boom, you make the sale. So we have a lot of people doing it that way, using webinars to onboard their clients and customers as well. And that's what EasyWebinar is right now.
So
And so I can
so
go into what
with
we are going to do with it in the
yeah,
future.
I'd love to hear that, and I mean, if you could touch on well, just was one thing that stood out to me, especially for the webinars that are being run live, not the pre-recorded ones, because it'd be a bit harder to do. But
Mm-hmm.
with the live
Yeah.
ones, I guess what's neat about those is that you could be on them live, and people could verify that it's really you that's on it, as opposed to a clone of you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they can ask, it's like we don't have that capability yet. Like, we have some people that are using our excuse me, our automated webinars, and actually having AI clones do the webinars. This is not our functionality, by the way, just to be clear, but they go out to a different platform, and they'll use an AI avatar that will basically do the presentation. Now, I have certain feelings about that, because I think that you lose that human to human connection, and it's novel, and I think this is what a lot of times people are doing. AI is such a novel thing that I think everybody's wanting to do it, and they'll try to use all these tools, and I think they're overusing it. And by overusing it, I think they're just going to have lukewarm results when they push it out, right? I'm thinking of a few people that I've seen try it, and to me, I feel like the you in front of the camera, even if it's a pre-recorded video, I think it's still very much way more powerful than an AI version. Because first off, AI version, they don't look good yet, right? We can't actually make the video look super good, but also you don't have the emotion necessarily. So yes, ours are you in front of the camera. People, you can ask you questions, you can field them and answer, um, and
There's
do fun stuff like that.
there's actually something interesting I want to say about the emotion side, Casey, because I actually think they can have the emotion. However, the emotions are off. So there is emotion, but it's off, and you can still pick up on it. But I'm not sure for how much longer. And that, because I watched some of the video
Right.
clips coming from View 3 from Google, and there was
Yeah.
someone made a short form movie. But it was interesting. The movie was made using VO3,
Mm-hmm.
but it was
Mm-hmm.
parts stitched together. So it still needed the human being
So much
to be
human.
the
So much
originator,
human.
yeah, to tell the story. But
Eventually, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
mm,
Well, no, I was just going to say, eventually, an agent will do that job. The agent, and what do you think about this? Do you think the agent would be able to discern and say, actually, this looks too AI, we're going to use this clip instead? Or do you think humans will still have to do that editing part, that the labor intensive part? They still had to write the right prompts, trial and error. There's so many things they had to go through. But what do you
yeah.
think? Do you think like an agent might jump into that role and might be
I
able to?
if I look at how coding has developed and how it's gone, from the beginning days of AI to where it is now, it's like, wow, you can vibe code something now in a few days, essentially, that would have taken maybe a year or even longer, and it's much cheaper and is getting much better and more accurate. But with coding, it's a very precise sort of thing. So and you can have a feedback loop much faster to improve on making it better and better. Whereas when you look at something like emotions and humans, that feedback loop is not as easy to create. So, but there is a feedback loop, but it's just slower. So I think we will probably get there, and we would
Mm.
probably have agents that you as a human could say, "Hey, agent, AI agent, create a story for me that really pulls these emotional triggers for human beings. Use the Christopher Vogler's writer's journey structure for the hero's journey, and Joseph Campbell's
Mm.
hero's journey stuff to
Mhm.
have the Hollywood sort of arc for the story, and develop the characters properly, etc., and then use the the visuals like from VO3, for example, to put it all together into a very cohesive story, so that humans can't tell whether it was done with AI or not. I think that's definitely gonna come. But what I'm just wondering is, in the future, will there be something like regulations that'll come into place that
Mm.
will require platforms to say this thing was fully created with AI, or these are not
Mm.
real humans? And especially when it comes to messaging, like, here's an example. So I watched there was a deep fake video of RFK Jr. the other day, and it
Mm.
was him
Mm.
saying something, and he's already a controversial guy, right? But he was saying something that was
Yeah.
slightly more controversial than what he normally says, but it wasn't. It was
Mhm.
quite believable still, and I was watching, going, this looks this looks a little bit off, but it looks still real. And the only way that I could tell was that it was a little bit off, like the messaging, but it didn't have to be. They
Mhm.
could have kept it, more on message. But the only reason I could tell was
Mm.
that I was looking at the people around him, because it was in the Oval Office, and there was Trump was standing next to him, and RFK Jr. said something quite controversial at one point, and Trump was just standing there, not, no one else in the room had any reaction on their face. And, hang on, he at least should have raised his eyebrow or something, so I could still pick
Mhm.
up on it, but it was
This is
already, it
tells.
sort of made
Yeah.
me think it was already so good. So with, you just think about
Wow.
political messaging, and then,
Mhm.
sales messaging, or anything where there's a persuasive component, where you want to move, or the whoever the idea is originating from, they want to move someone to take a certain action, whether it's political or business wise. You would probably want to know whether it was AI that influenced you to take that action or not.
Yeah.
And that becomes quite a philosophical question, because you can already say, well, AI is already helping us write the scripts for our sales videos or for our webinars, and so it's already having an input into the persuasive side and moving people to action. So it's already in there, But could there be a place in the future where it's completely done with AI, and it's like, AI is just controlling humanity? So will there come a time where it might become a requirement for companies to say, hey, this was AI. Maybe there's two streams. Maybe there's one stream of fully AI, or whatever it is, and then one
Mhm.
stream of, no, this stream has been checked. It's real humans. So you can choose which one you want. I don't actually know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
It's like trying to look over the horizon and not being able to see what's going to
Right.
happen. So I don't actually really know. Yeah, I don't think
Well,
anybody
it's
knows.
it's
So
the
yeah.
humans that are the humans are the ones that are doing these deep fakes, right? So it's a human creating an AI version of a deep fake, meaning that they're doing things maliciously, right, or predatory, right? So I feel like there would probably be regulations on yes. I think that having regulations um, on knowing and how AI can be used, I think will probably be an important thing, because right now it's kind of the Wild West. People are just there is no regulation, and that will be locked down. I think especially with the more people abuse AI. With to do deep fakes, or to manipulate political schemes, and to manipulate markets and all sorts of stuff. I mean, there are people that use it now today, obviously for predatory reasons, right? So I think that the more the Wild West gets reined in, I think that they will probably require things like that. I think you're right. or like I think especially if they're used irresponsibly, right? Like if you're using it to create a sales video, that's not necessarily irresponsible, right? But if you're pretending to be someone who's not actually saying what they're saying, that is a problem, right? So I think its intended use will be a factor. How it's
Mm.
intended to be used or how it's being used, abused. I think there will be regulations around that for sure.
Yeah, and it's going to be very interesting. Casey, we've got to start wrapping things up a little bit. But before we do, just what are your final thoughts on, what's the future for you and EasyWebinar? How are you going to be growing that in this new world of AI and authenticity and, being seen, bringing all these things together? What are your
Yeah.
final thoughts on what's going to be your strategy? And then we'll close things off.
Yeah, well, like for us, it's the debate, of course, is on, what kind of AI are we putting into the system? Obviously, AIing things like, building a complete webinar from A to Z, being able to have all the emails done, building out the web pages of your webinar funnel. Like these are clear and those are great. We should definitely have those. But then there are some other questions around how we use AI. First off, yes, AI agents to do maybe chat, to maybe sales agents to close more sales, clarify any questions as people may have. Then there's also this question of, does AI come into play as a avatar that can be doing your webinars for you? Can it be you, right? Not just moderate your webinars, not just write your email copy or your pages and things like that, but can it actually run the webinar itself? And that is, I'm sort of stuck in this moral dilemma of deciding and choosing, whether we create something where AI can do it, maybe an AI voice, but maybe you're right. Maybe we say, listen, this is built by AI, or this is AI. But we're talking about those things. We're needing to talk about those things because I think it's going to be actually something that this is what's where the direction everybody's going in. For me, I would still want to have this humane one-to-one human connection, one to many, as a part of what we're doing. I wouldn't want to lose that. And there was a conversation we had about, do we become an AI company or do we just have AI supporting, in all the aspects of what we as a service do. And so, the future of Easy Webinar is that we don't just want to be a conversion platform to help with sales, but we also want to be a content platform. So we've been having these discussions around how can we be more of a content platform where you can make a video, very much like what we're doing here, and 4K recording. Podcasters can use it, download it. You could do other things with it, maybe put it into a gated area, put it into an automated webinar, put it into a gated area where you can have multiple webinars. There's a few things we're discussing right now, and we are actively doing those moves right now to add those parts into the system because the system already does it. But again, we aren't necessarily turning into like easywebinar.ai, but what we are doing is AI is fundamentally in every part of the business, from what our users can use as well as how we um, build our systems into the future. And employees, whoever comes into our company, they know that foundationally we use AI in the company to speed up processes and things like that. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like this. I've got so many more questions, and it's so many more things that, especially me and you, can talk about, given our history and
Yeah.
given that we've both been in video for such a long time, and that we've both
Yeah.
went down the SaaS path as well, and we both now doing AI within our SaaS companies as well. And
Yeah.
it's just so all pervasive. So yeah, I've many more questions, but we've kind of run out of time, and so I just wanted to be respectful of that, and wanted to say thank you, Casey. Like I
Yeah.
said, you've been an inspiration for me throughout all these years, And it's been amazing to see how you've grown EasyWebinar, how you've stuck with it. I think a lot of people, they start something and then they kind of move around. And I've been very guilty of that myself. But,
Mhm.
that's been an inspiration for me to see you stick with it and growing it year after year and just keeping on going. And also your inspirational story behind that has been very inspirational to me personally. But so thank you very much. Where can people go to learn more about you,
Yeah.
find out about you and EasyWebinar and anything else?
Yeah. Well, and I'd like to also say, let's do this again, and I'll invite you to a podcast, and we will have this conversation again,
Sounds good.
and discuss even deeper. I want to go into everything you're doing, and how we just resonate on those topics. So,
Sounds good.
but to cap this one, you can just go to my Instagram at Casey Zeman. I also am building my YouTube channel. Nowhere near where Gideon is at this point, but he's my inspiration. So you can find me, just type in Casey Zeman. You can find me there. And if you have any questions on EasyWebinar, just pop over to easywebinar.com and we'll answer. There's a little, chat bot. You can actually, it's a human you could talk to. We still have humans on our that are running our
Right.
customer support.
So I'm just on the site here. So that's easywebinar.com. Should be easy to spell. Yeah, and I've just found you on Instagram as well. What are you talking about? You've got
Yes.
197,000 followers. You are smashing it. I think I have a
Well,
few lessons to learn from you. Maybe we need to have an interview about that, Casey. I want to find out how the heck did you manage to grow your Instagram followers like that. That's incredible.
we can totally discuss that, and I love breaking those things down. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the YouTube stuff. There's so many things that I could be sharing, all about that. From I've gone down deep into Instagram growth at one point. Learned everything there is to know about it, what the big names were doing with Instagram growth, and my takes on it, and my honest takes. So, love to talk to you about that at some point. That sounds fun.
I'd love that, Casey. So maybe we set up another call, certainly with me and you talking about, me coming in your show, but also maybe another follow-up as well where this definitely piqued my interest. I didn't realize you're smashing it so much on Instagram because I've been seeing your videos on LinkedIn and actually mostly LinkedIn. I didn't realize that you're smashing it so much on IG. Well done. So that's really awesome to see.
I'm trying to get my team to do more distribution on LinkedIn, on TikTok. You could do some
Yeah.
wonders on TikTok right now.
Oh, yeah.
We could. There's plenty to discuss. My thing is a YouTube. That's really the nut that I'm trying to crack. So I have content that's going out on YouTube once a week, but then the Instagram shorts that are going out every day. Basically,
Gotcha.
that's kind of what's been going on. So, but I have to feed the beast. So I have to keep on making video content, which I now have a studio. So I'm just being more proactive about doing that.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to find out more about that, Casey. Thank you so much. It's been so good to catch up with you again and to see you again. And I look forward to our next chat.
It was my pleasure, Gideon. Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you.